Hello everybody and welcome to SVM TV's special tournament called Swedish Super Cup. It's a world premiere for this tournament and my name is David, I'm the founder of SVM TV, and with me today is Anders Görling. Hello
Nice
Anders.
to be with you. Hello David, super nice to be here, super excited to be here, looking really forward to this event. We're super impressed with all the work that you guys did to come up with this, and yeah, looking forward to do some commentating here with you tonight.
Alright, we're just setting up the players here for the first game. Could you tell us a little bit about this tournament and what are the players, what decks are the players battling out here today?
Yes, I'll start out with explaining a little bit about the premises of the tournament itself, and then I'll go on to kind of go into details of the decks we're looking at here tonight. So basically, what we did was we rounded up some of the most influential and well-known Swedish players and asked them to, if they wanted to join us playing one of their favorite decks of all time. So it doesn't matter which era or what format the deck is from. It's just your one favorite standard deck of all time. And there was like this gentleman agreement that, well, some decks at some point during Magic they were a little bit too good, even to the extent that it actually impaired the fun side of things. So you have like your affinity with the 4 Skull Clamps main deck, for example, before the Skull Clamp was banned. And I think that these decks are some of them are better than others for sure, but I think it's going to be a really, really tough call here. So yeah, could you tell us something about else of the
Swedish
the process behind this?
The Swedish Super Cup is basically a single elimination bracket consisting of 8 players. So each Sunday from now on, a couple of weeks forth, we will be battling out the standard deck of your choice matches between the 8 pros you can find on svmtv.org. You can also vote for what deck you believe is the most successful here. Okay, so we have to. I think the players just timed out, so we will have to prepare this game for you again. I think we are pretty set for just giving it over to the players here. We'll just have to enter spectating mode here again, and as far as I can tell from the poll at svmtv.org, I think Larsson, who will be playing here later tonight, is set to be the favorite to win this tournament.
Yeah, so with that said, maybe we should talk a little bit about the different decks we have here tonight. So first up, our first matchup tonight is going to be Rosholm versus Rachid. Rosholm, one of the older players or rather a long-time player in the Swedish Magic community, playing his Replenish deck from the Worlds 2000. And I spoke to him a little bit before we joined here tonight, and he said that even though the deck is kind of typical as far as replenishment decks goes, he still has some personal twists to it, and some of the more notable exceptions from the normal deck, so to say, or the standard, would be that he doesn't play any Rosholm ports. And Rosholm ports, for people who don't know it, is well, it allows you to tap your opponent's land for 1 mana. It's a land itself and was super influential in the standard scene at the time, and instead opting for that back to basics main deck, which of course is a one-off, but you can still find it with your Enlightened Tutor, so you have that together with a more heavy focus on the basic lands. Also, a personal kind of detail from him is that he added a lightning refrain in the main deck, and note that all 4 Wrath of Gods are in the sideboard, so kind of tuning the main deck towards a little bit emphasizing the control matchup. and thus sacrificing a little bit towards the aggro matchup. We'll see. I think that's gonna definitely play into his favor tonight, as Rachid is. Well, he plays the Mono Black control deck, and Mono Black control deck was a super big deck during the was this 2002 era, 2001, 2002 era. It's a slightly more modern version, modern standard than the deck Rosholm is playing, but yeah, this deck focuses a lot on creature removal together with your Diabolic Tutor, and of course the Cabal Coffers together with the you have your Corrupt and your Skeletal Scryings and so on. So it basically like it has this toolbox kind of aspect to it, together with the heavy focus on creature removal to win out against, to be able to combat those creature heavy decks. Yeah, so that about summarizes the two decks we're looking at here tonight. For the complete deck list, you can always go to svntv.org and find your way to the deck list in the site.
All right, I think we have sorted out the players' hands here, as you can see them.
Yeah, from my point of view, we have the Rachid just played his second swamp, and Rosholm taps up and plays his third lands with Sky Diamond in play. So I think this is gonna be the first action turn. Let's see what he brings out.
It's Parallax Tide here. This card is a bit special. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Parallax Tide. Could you bring up a zoom in on the Parallax Tide for our viewers? So basically, the Parallax Tide, it allows you. It comes into play with the 5 fading counters, and the fading mechanics was a keyword mechanic from this period. And during each upkeep, you remove 1 fading counter from the permanent, and if you cannot, the permanent is sacrificed. So this is basically the same mechanic as Banish, which was part in the time spiral cycle, except that fading 5 equals vanishing 6.
Yeah. So, and here, I mean, Rosholm is just playing the Tide here, exiling a couple of Denniz red lands, just delaying him a bit.
Exactly.
But just exiling the lands is not really Rosholm's game plan, is it?
No, I mean, Parallax Tide is the one way that the replenishment deck has to stalling versus to control decks. So in this matchup in particular, I mean, Dennis' main game plan has got to be to resolve that Mind Sludge to completely empty Rosholm's hand. But in using the Parallax Tide, he can kind of delay that process, because as long as the Tide is in play, you can kind of keep removing the lands, and we'll see the next upkeep the Tide will be crashed, but as we can see, he has the replenishment to bring it back again should he want to. I mean, also available is the Enlightened Tutor. With that might let's see what he is looking for here.
So
Attunement.
So Attunement is a card that really comes to shine in this Replenish decks, as you can gain a ton of card advantage, as well as you discard cards that you can, or enchantments that you can bring back with Replenish later. So it's not a card disadvantage to draw 3 and discard 4, it's actually just card advantage all over.
Yeah, especially, I mean, and you can always discard the attunement itself. So it's basically, it's always like 4 cards for 4 cards, but in this one matchup, or rather in this one deck, it is even more powerful, because the replenishment, of course, allows you to bring that back.
Yeah.
Together with all the other enchantments that you chose to discard. And
we see here Denniz just continuing to cycle his Undead Gladiators, which you can bring back from your graveyard, discarding a card. So this is pretty much Denniz' way of searching up for an answer, I guess. And we also see Denniz playing Cabal Coffers, the only non-basic land, I think, in his deck. which at the time was just famous for producing a lot of black mana.
Yeah, Cabal Coffers together with Mirari was one of the ways that allowed the black decks to play lots of really expensive cards, and also together with the Gladiator, you can kind of, in spite of it being very expensive, you can still cycle through your deck fairly quickly to find the cards that you're looking for. So, yeah.
We see Rosholm here drawing a couple of attunements here. So this will be a pretty good replenish. It's the first replenish of the game, and what will he end up with here? So it's a Parallax Wave, a Parallax Tide, 2 attunements, and 1 Seal of Cleansing. So how will that Seal of Cleansing interact in this particular game?
Yeah, I was actually talking to him about this before we went on air, and the Parallax cards, both the Parallax Tide and the Parallax Wave, were actually power eroded back in the day. So what you could do was you could put 3 activations on the stack, or any number of activations on the stack, then sacrifice the Seal of Cleansing to remove the Parallax card before the cards were actually removed. And so that would bring on the trigger to return the cards back into play, which would then mean that the card after that the cards selected would be removed, and they would be permanently removed from the game. And this was like power eroded at the time because it was not the way the card didn't play as it was intended, so they changed the text of the card to read that the cards would only get removed if the Parallax card was still in play.
Okay. So on Magic Online now, it's working as intended.
It is working as it was written.
As it was written.
So
okay.
They removed, since the card was rotated out of the game, they decided that this was it's confusing for newer players if the cards didn't do what they actually said, you know.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so it's looking pretty grim here for Denniz, I guess. Looking at his hand, he does not even have mana for his tutors. I mean, how could Denniz win this this matchup here, pre-boarding? Is it just waiting for Thomas to draw himself out, or for Denniz just waiting for a big corrupt to the face?
I don't know. Pre-boarding, I think that I mean the one thing that you have as an answer for the opalescence is of course your mutilate, but it requires you to have lots and lots of lands in play, because if there are too many Parallax Tides, well, they can just nullify the effect of the mutilate.
Yeah.
Furthermore, you also have the Parallax Wave that can remove the opalescence and so on and so forth. So I don't know. I do not know how this matchup is actually supposed to play out. Maybe, like you said, a big corrupt to the face, maybe with Mirari support. But then again, you all still need those lands to make that happen in a meaningful way. So.
Yeah. But I mean, these kind of matchups are really what this format is about. When you get to choose your own favorite standard deck, like Replenish against an aggro deck or a control deck, a mono black control deck, was not something we saw back in the days. So
no, definitely not.
Obviously, it's not a very good meta call here for Denniz, being unfortunate to end up against the Replenish deck. However, there are a lot of standard decks in this tournament, reaching from Time Sieve to 1997 Slide decks, mono red burn decks, so to say. And I guess in the Time era, these two decks are not that far from each other. I mean, 2003 and 2000, they are pretty much in the middle of the spectrum. But the standard game was really, really different from these 3 years.
I think that one important aspect to keep in mind is that the excuse me, the 2000 Worlds was the Worlds event where Tinker was actually a standard card, and even though the card itself were never banned, as far as I know, I mean, a lot of the other cards evolving around it, like the memory jar and so on, did receive several, bannings. And having said that, I mean, it's still incredibly powerful cards, and a lot of the decks at the time kind of favored more control-ish play. And I think that going from the Ursa block to the Mercadian Mask block, you kind of saw a really big decrease in power level, and from that point, I mean, steadily been climbing again, but I think the developers really took a step backwards, or tried to really tone down the power level of the cards between Saga and Mask block.
Yeah. Stepping forward or backwards here. Anyways,
tricky thing, yeah.
This is basically the Replenish deck. Would you call it comboing out or going off, or is this just part of the game?
No, I mean, at this point, I mean, the only piece missing for the puzzle to be complete is the Opal Essence. But with the 4 attunements in play, I think that Rosholm has the resources he needs to find that sooner rather than later.
So basically here, Rosholm is displaying the way he could win this game, just playing a bunch of enchantments, playing Opal Essence, which turns all your enchantments into creatures, and just swinging for lethal in one turn.
Yeah, also, I mean, with the backup of the parallax cards, you kind of remove all the blockers, remove all the lands, it leaves your opponent with very little options in terms of defending himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that this first game is...
It's much more of solitaire.
More or less over. Yeah, definitely in the solitaire mode at the moment.
Yeah. So the difference from just goldfishing this deck is that Denniz might once in a while play a duress, I guess.
Once in a while. Yeah.
Once in a while, but we haven't seen anyone in this game. So yeah, Denniz is stuck on one land here, and we can see that his draws are not helping him. Would you expect Rosholm here just to use his attunements as soon as possible to find the Opal Essence?
Yeah, I would expect so. I mean, maybe I do not know. I mean, it depends a bit on his mentality, I guess. Maybe he feels that it's so comfortable, he wants to kind of ride this just a little bit longer. But knowing him, I think he'll wanted to have maybe 1 or 2 cards just to have the ability to kind of select which card you discard and which ones you keep, right?
Yeah. So, is there a way for the Replenish deck to fizzle, or I mean, just is there a way that you can discard all your opponent or your important cards and just not have any replenishes left, or so to speak, just destroy the game for yourself? Could you lose against yourself with the Replenish deck?
I mean, I guess it is possible, but I mean, you have seen people lose several times to like stupid misclicks on the Magic Online, and I guess having the Parallax Wave together with the Opal Essence and removing cards in the wrong order with the wrong triggers on the stack and so on, I mean, you could punch yourself in the face while shooting yourself in the foot and so on.
Well, that's actually a good point, because different from the in real life Magic metagame, where you can just say that, yeah, I'll do this and kill you. In Magic Online, you actually have to go through the motions. Here we see the Opal Essence entering the battlefield here, turning all the enchantments into 4/4s and 2/2s and 3/3s and so on. So Rosholm here swinging for lethal, I would say.
Let's say.
Is it exactly lethal? I think it's a bit more. Alright, so Rosholm takes the first game here. Not really.
Pretty convincingly, I must say.
Yeah. Would you tell us a bit about Thomas Rosholm here? We have the bio up.
Yeah, right. So Thorén, just not with you there. Could you please do this because it's not showing for me? All right. So I'm getting Rachid's bio, and then there's Rosholm's bio. Okay, so yeah, like I said, Rosholm is one of the players that's been around for a really long time, and is from the south part of Sweden. So I guess half Swedish, half Danish, because I think one of his parents is Danish. So kind of been a really well-known household name in the Malmö, Lund, and the Copenhagen scene. Excuse me. So also kind of a big name in the early years of Svenska Magic, and a big community member. You know, always hanging around on forums, on the IRC channels back in the days, and definitely a regular face in all the Pro Tours, PTQ circuits, and nationals several times, as mentioned, and of course with the big win, or rather not big win, but joining the World's team in 2000, where this deck is from. Also a personal friend of mine, so I'm especially pleased to see him here in this event. It's fun to follow your friends like that.
Alright, so looking at Rosholm's deck here, at his sideboard, I mean, is there anything you would say Thomas is likely to bring in here against the mono black deck? Because there aren't many cards in his main deck that you can actually take out of this deck, because if you take out, for example, some of the Parallax Waves, or I mean the Replenish, or the Tutors, you're actually taking out vital parts of the engine of the deck.
Yeah, what I would guess at, I mean, I think the way to approach this is kind of looking at Rachid's deck and kind of guess what he'll bring in, and my guess is that's got to be the more discards, the Haunting Echoes for sure, and kind of try to disrupt the game plan of the Replenish deck early on in order to gain the time he needs to kind of get going with the Tutors and the big, and hopefully also resolving in Haunting Echoes to kind of really put a dent in the replenishment plan.
Alright, so let's have a quick look here at Rachid's deck before we're going back to that game. I mean, in his sideboard, I can't see there is really much that he wants to bring. I mean, there's a lot of cards that are dead in the main deck, like a lot of removals. So basically, what do he bring in here? Is there Ensnaring Bridge, or I mean, Persecutes, I guess, Capital Therapy?
Yeah, Capital Therapy and Persecutes for sure, together with the Haunting Echoes. And I mean, basically a lot of the creature removal is more or less dead again in this matchup. So I think we might even see the Rancid making its way in there. I mean, gotta count how much cards does he have to actually. I mean, he can definitely cut Smothers, because even if the enchantments are animated, I mean, the Smother gets none of them. So that's 4 cards right there, the Innocent Blood and the Chainer's Edict. That makes it a total of 10, and yeah, Mutilate makes it 13. So I don't know, I think we'll see Rachid sidewing most, if not all, of those cards out in favor of the additional discards and maybe even the Rancid Arts.
Okay, could you tell the players to hold on a bit here? I think Magic Online has got stuck in some weird mode.
Yeah, I'll get to that, sorry.
Yep, this does not seem to be working. I'll let you have a look at Denniz Rachid's history here and restarting the client. So could you tell us a little bit about Denniz Rachid? I mean, he's one of the most potent and experienced professional players in Sweden, and he has 2 top 8s from the Pro Tour just in a couple of years.
Yeah, I guess similar to Rosholm, although being quite much younger than
I think you need to tell the players here to stop playing.
I'm sorry. So, if our viewers could Maybe be patient with that. I'm trying to get across. I did write to them in chat, but I'm not getting there. So hopefully one of them will pick up. How are things looking at your side?
I'm looking at. Alright, I may get in here. It seems like I cannot join the game here. It's not open. So I'm pretty sure they will have to.
Also, I'm getting told that my video, like my webcam, is also on freeze.
I don't think it's on freeze anymore. It should be alright.
So hopefully that should clear up. But
yeah, I don't know really how to solve this at this point. I mean, the game should be up here. Alright, we will have a few moments just required to fix this out. I guess you can see the player's hands, but that doesn't say a lot. You can only see Denniz' hands twice.
So can you get through on them via Skype or some other means maybe?
Not sure. I can of course try to type to them. So we're trying to communicating here to the players to restart the game so we can join. In the meanwhile, I just put Dennis's deck up here.
Yeah, so while we wait and while David is trying to get things sorted with everything, I'll talk a little bit about the Rachid's deck. So, like I said earlier, I think that his main game plan, especially for this post-sideboard game, is going to bring in a lot of those discard spells and try to disrupt his opponent that way. And one of the things that you could discuss is what color he'll name if he resolves a persecute, because you're basically do you go for the blue cards, which are basically the card enablers that you have your frantic search and your attunements and your what am I missing here? Well, you have all these good blue cards, and then the white, of course, you have the replenishment itself, and you have the opalescence and so forth. So looking at looks like we are actually
about about to join a game that's halfway finished. We can check in the players' graveyards here what has happened. I guess Denniz has cast a few skeletal scryings here, drawing cards, and I guess it's 2 cards that he's drawn with it, since he's at 18. And somehow Rosholm has gotten 2 replenishes to his graveyard. I would guess one of them is due to a Cabal therapy that Denniz led off with. Also playing Rancid Earth, destroying key lands for Rosholm here. Well, maybe something got countered, but we know for sure there's an attunement in play. And I'll try to communicate to the players that they are good to go here.
Alright, meanwhile, I guess I'll try to get the game open on my end, because I have not been able to join the game for game 2 in my Magic Online client.
Right. I think the players will be starting here in a few seconds. Okay, so we are going again. Thomas Rosholm here passing the turn, or Denniz passing the turn here to Thomas with an attunement in play. We can see there's a Frantic Surge and a Parallax Wave here or Parallax Tide for Rosholm, together with a Seal of Cleansing. Denniz on his hand is keeping a Corrupt, a Scrying, and it seems like Rosholm here is just exiling some lands with Parallax Tide here, just preventing Denniz from stopping him with some kind of discard or other kind of spell. Cabal Coffers, of course, being a pretty unique land, that it doesn't tap for mana itself. You actually need 2 colorless to have it produce any mana at all. So Thomas is free here to just let the Cabal Coffers be in play.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Cabal Coffers, it doesn't do anything until you have your 3 swamps in play. At which point you can tap that one plus another 2 swamps to add a 3 mana. So when you have 3 swamps and the coffers in play, you're basically as if you were on 4 lands. Whereas before that point, it's like you're having no land in play. And after that point, of course, it keeps on adding. But I mean, as we can see, this game playing out slightly different from the first one. I think that the Cabal Therapy catching the Replenish, of course, slow things down considerably. And you spoke to me earlier and asked me if there is any way that, I mean, I wouldn't say that you can, like, it's a deck that shoots itself in the foot so much, but I mean, it's definitely a deck that can kind of, you know, run out of gas or run into a lull where you have lots of ways to stall your opponent, but not really doing that much for yourselves. And I mean, with the attunement, those periods only last for so long, but...
Yeah, as always, playing a card that gains you tempo, like Parallax Tide, you actually need to do something with the time you're buying yourself. But Denniz here, I mean, he's set on 2 lands, basically only 1 mana here. But as soon as he gets those lands back from the Parallax Tide, he can actually do something. Besides the fact that Rosholm here just cast another Parallax Tide.
Yeah, life is not always so fair, huh? Yeah, I mean, even though this game played out slightly different than the first one, I mean, considering Rachid's point of view, I mean, he must feel as if this has all been about the Parallax Tide and him not being able to do what he wants to. I don't know what to say.
Well, could this be a spot where Denniz actually can do something here? I mean, of course Denniz will probably lose all his mana again, and Rosholm will continue to strip his opponent for his lands, seeing as he has 2 additional copies of the Parallax Tide. However, at some point Denniz will get the lands back here, as Rosholm is not really drawing a Replenish or some other card that will get him further into the combo of his deck, so to say.
Yeah, I guess so, but I mean, like I said, he still has the attunement, so I mean, while he delays the land progress of Rachid, I mean, he can still dig through his deck quite fast with that attunement, so I think this is just a matter of time. Rachid is definitely on the short clock to find something, to do something useful here.
Yeah. We see Rosholm playing his second Parallax Tide. I guess it's really something to evaluate here, how aggressive he can be with these tides. Here he's exiling all the swamps for Denniz Rachid again, being pretty confident that just leaving 2 time counters on the Parallax Tide here is enough. And it should be, right?
I think it should be. Again, reminding newer players of the difference between the Parallax Tide and the wording of fading versus the wording of vanish is, of course, that even if you go down to 0 time counters on the Parallax Tide, I mean, it's still in play for another full turn. So, yeah, I think he should definitely have a pretty... He's right to be confident, that's what I'm trying to say.
So using this attunement here, he finds a pretty special card called Iron Masks. It means that nothing can target Rosholm here. He has Shroud. He can't be targeted by spells or abilities. That means that all the discard effects or Cabal therapies and persecutes, or corrupt for that matter, of Denniz Rachid is worthless.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant card in this matchup for sure, and I remember playing the mono blue, mono black deck back in the days. The mask was still around, and definitely one of the worst cards for you to hit the deck, because as a black player you only have you're not the best color to deal with those pesky enchantments, and
there is not a lot of permanent removal or enchantment removal in the black colors.
No, some of the decks you played the Oblivion Stone only to be able to deal with cards like this, but seeing as Rachid doesn't play it in neither main deck nor sideboard, I think that... I don't know, does he have anything to actually deal with this?
I think he still has the creatures that he can swing with. However, Rosholm here has the Parallax wave for that as well. I guess he's just continuing to chain the attunements here, because once he finds another Replenish or just something to add more gas and more control to the table, this game is pretty far out of reach for Denniz.
Yeah, and is Hunting Echoes, is that a targeted spell as well? It's target player's graveyard, right?
Yeah. Could you check it up?
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. So.
As soon as Rosholm is playing his Opalescence here, he is opening himself up to removal, of course, killing his Ivory Masks and then being a target again. But I don't see Thomas taking that risk. It would be pretty unnecessary to just lose a game to play the Opalescence too early and start the beatdown.
Yeah, I think he's gonna sit real comfortable right here and just wait for him to have... I mean, I think if he finds the Opalescence together with a Replenish, I think that's gonna be what it takes to just end the game right there, because he'll have plenty of Parallax Tides to remove his opponent's lands.
Yeah.
And just that one turn to get the summoning sickness of his enchantments before he swings in for the lethal damage once again.
And Thomas here sitting on an Enlightened Tutor. Is there anything he wants to search up at this point?
I think I think he's just wishing for that replenishment, and I think he might even consider pitching the tutor to the attunement to find a replenishment sooner rather than later. But then again, as we pointed out, he's in no stress to do so. I mean, he can just sit back and wait, basically. I don't think Denniz has much to do at the moment. Is he gonna hard cast that? Oh, he cycles the Gladiator. I mean, you gotta ask yourself, what's the plan of Rachid at the moment?
Well, he's trying to keep on destroying the lands here, because that's something that doesn't target Rosholm here. But I guess starting to cast those Undead Gladiators, at least that, I mean, swinging for 3, that's not too shabby at this point. You gotta do something.
Yeah, I do not know. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, he's definitely stuck between like a rock and a hard place. So
Yeah.
I guess you
Seeing,
gotta ask yourself, like, if you're using the gladiator, the cycle, what's he looking for?
yeah. And of course, I mean, this match is not that super interactive. But on the, I mean, from one point of view, it is very, very interactive. But Denniz here, I guess, has to start changing these undead gladiators. Yeah, you see him pretty much giving up on the persecute plan here, discarding it to the gladiator. And I mean, there is not a lot that he can do at this point. Basically discarding his duress here and his second persecute to the undead gladiator, which you can bring up from the graveyard for 2 mana and get to cycle it again. And a Mind Sludge, yep. No Mind Sludge either.
No, but I guess the one plan he does have is to have basically all of the lands in his deck in play when before Rosholm gets going with the Replenish.
Yeah.
Because how many parallax tides are there? I mean, if he's not able to remove all the lands in one go, I mean, maybe he can get something accomplished.
Well, of course, if you remove 4 lands with each parallax tide each, I mean, you will also have to deal with floating the mana, but I don't think there's a lot of that Denniz can do in instant speed. But that's at least 16 lands taken away from Denniz there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gotta be harsh. I mean, that's gotta be harsh. And he can even, I mean, you can even remove the 5 counters. If you find the opalescence, you can remove the parallax tides with the opalescence. Yeah. With the parallax waves, and you get them back with the full charge and so on and so forth. So I mean, yeah, what can you say? I mean, you gotta admire the guy for trying, right?
Yeah. Well, he's continuing to discarding the duresses and persecutes of his deck. At some point, do you think he will cast the undead gladiator?
Like I said, I mean, his goal at the moment has got to be to put the lands into play, yeah. And maybe when he sits there with his like 20-something lands, then yeah, it will come out at one point, for sure.
And also, 1 corrupt would be lethal.
yeah, but I mean, I guess the other card he's really searching for is the guild feeder, right? Because I mean,
yeah,
the guild feeder. Would it come through, it would be, I mean, maybe swinging for little even at this point. I do not have a perfect count on the graveyard.
Step 1 would be to exile the Ivory Mask, I guess, which could be easily done with Rosholm playing an Opalescence. But at that point, I'm not sure if...
and Rosholm, of course, realizing that Denniz might be searching for something, is sitting there with keeping the counterspell just in case.
Interesting here is that Denniz is keeping the destroy Rosholm's blue sources. However, the counterspell that Rosholm has been sitting on here is comes to use, countering that Rancid Earth. Oh.
Yeah, well, I guess keeping Rosholm in a low mana count. I mean, maybe he can. Maybe there's still hope.
Well, look at what he just drew here. Let's replenish, sir.
That's a replenish.
But what does it do here? Oh, yeah, it did everything. Okay.
Those things are pretty good.
Well, at this point, Denniz needs at least 4 swamps in play, playing a Mutilate. But I haven't seen any Mutilate in Denniz Rachid's hand.
I think that one did not make it through.
No.
Close to sideboarding, so... Yeah, and again,
right.
So, I mean, Rosholm could remove stuff with his Parallax Wave in response to that, and so on.
Exactly, and we see Denniz conceding here to the fact he's facing Thomas exiling all his lands in one turn, leaving him with nothing. And Thomas Rosholm advances to to the semi-finals of this tournament. And let me bring up the old school way, the bracket for you here. Basically, this tournament is a single elimination bracket of 8 players, and it's the best Swedish players of all times battling it out with their favorite standard decks. And right now we saw Thomas beating Denniz Rachid in the quarterfinals, moving on to face the winner in the matchup between Ole Rode and Elias Watsfeld. And I guess the Replenish deck, what do you say about the chances for beating a mono red deck or another combo deck?
Yeah, I do not know. I mean, the red deck, it's definitely a lot. I mean, you got to consider that the mono black deck has very little opportunity to actually put a pressure on a replenishment deck that gets a slow start. Whereas the red deck, I mean, definitely puts on the early pressure and kind of maybe you gonna make Rosholm regret putting those Wrath of Gods in the sideboard and so on. But
we will see. I think that Replenish is kind of a deck that doesn't really care what's it up against, as long as it gets its engine rolling. But I do think that the Replenish deck might have some problems against a really fast mono red deck. I'm not sure. But we will actually just go and talk about the next matchup here. I think the dates here is a little bit well, it's actually correct. The next match we will have here in just a few minutes is Larsson versus Thorén. And you can always find the deck lists at svmtv.org. And we'll have blue and black Faeries versus a Dromar deck called Probe Go from Thorén here. And would you tell us a little bit about Thorén?
Yeah, do you have his bio available?
Yep, it's up on the screen right now.
Yeah, okay, so more or less the same age as Rosholm, is one of the older players in the Magic community. Always been one of those players that you're always super afraid to run into at a tournament. He's always comes prepared. He not very talkative person, but super deadly with the Magic cards. So like the bio said, he's been called one of the most naturally talented Swedish Magic players of all time, and he has this kind of calm to him that really gets under your skin. Like he just knows what he does at all times, or at least that's what it feels like. So Thorén, coming from the north of Sweden, was part of this pro team called Team Punisher, and the name, as far as I know, is actually from this deck that he's playing today, which features the Dromar the Punisher. So he and his friends were super successful. Also, Anton Johnson was also in the tournament, and who else was there? Johan Sadekpour formed like this team, and together with some of the other players, and yeah, not hard to see why he chose the Punisher card, the deck centered around Dromar the Punisher, given that was the name of their team.
Alright, so let's take a look at the deck list that Thorén is playing here. It is, well, it's an Esper colored, if you would like to use the new charts to describe the colors. A blue, black, and white. I would say a control deck, but it has a lot of elements to it. Like, it's playing Nether Spirits, just bringing back recurring creatures, winning nutrition wars between small creatures trading off. Pretty good against mono red or aggressive decks in general. And of course playing cards like Probe and Factor Fiction, which are huge card advantage, and counter spells such as Absorb. At the time, a very good counter spell. It gains you 3 life, and of course, as in most of the standard formats of these times, Wrath of God was a standard legal card. And to compare this with today's standard format, I mean, in today's standard, there is no 4-mana Wrath of God. We've had that for a long time, and that's sort of the standard for the Type 2 meta. We will get the players set up here. Would you talk a bit about Joel Larsson? I would say our most brightest Magic star right now.
Yeah, so compared to Thorén and Rosholm, who were the brightest stars of their time, I guess that Larsson is the brightest stars on the Swedish Magic scene at the moment. And also, one of the younger generation, maybe one of the first of the younger generation to actually pop out and make a big impact on the Pro Tour scene. And like it says here in the bio, it has the highest limited match win percentage during 2012. But Larsson in no way is restricted to limited players. Like it says, biggest achievement was his Pro Tour Gate Crash with the blue, white, red deck. And yeah, what can I say? I mean, he's a really versatile player and super friendly guy. And yeah, I actually ran into him downtown the other day and just asked him quickly what he thought about his matchup, and he said that his point of view was that, well, both of the decks are kind of similar in that they focus really on the card advantage, but his point of view was that, well, his deck is a more modern one, and the overall card quality and obviously should allow him to do things more efficiently than Thorén. I guess that was the takeaway message I got.
Yeah, well, you will hear playing Faeries from the Time Spiral and Lorwyn standard. I think it's just really one of the best standard decks of all times, if you would ask me, because it's very streamlined. It's a control aggressive kind of deck, which can either go a really aggressive route, just playing creatures, bashing you in the face, or it could take a really controlling standpoint, just preventing your opponent from playing the cards they want, with cryptic commands, spell sprites, and Teferi, and rune snags, of course, and also Vendilion Click. And if you look at this deck list, there's a lot of cards here that is present in many legacy cards or legacy decks.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that one of the best cards for Larsson is definitely gonna be that Bitter Blossom, because even though the Dromar deck has a lot of potential for card advantage and through and counter magic, the Bitter Blossom just keeps adding those small creatures, and again, not interceptable by the Nether Spirits either. So I think that would be one of Larsson's main plans here, to resolve a Bitter Blossom and to kind of just ride that one to victory. But I don't know. I mean, what is your take on this matchup?
I'm not really sure. The decks are kind of similar, but I would say Thorén's deck is a bit slower. And playing Wrath of Gods and so means that Thorén has the opportunity to just reset the board and play a big threat and bash down Joel. However, Joel is really... I mean, when you're playing similar decks, the slower decks tends to win because of the greater cards. But I think this is really a matchup where we feel the differences from the standard of Time Spiral and Lorwyn and the standard format of Maskus in Invasion. Fair to say, the standard of Time Spiral and Lorwyn included many more powerful cards than it did back then. However, there are some really cards that stand out to me in Jens' deck here, like Probe and the Factor Fiction.
Yeah.
I would say this is a pretty tight matchup, actually.
Yeah, I think that one of the cards we haven't discussed yet is the Sabos Web that Jens is playing, and a card not known to... I don't know how well known this card is, but it's an artifact for 2 that, aside from allowing you to just draw a card as it enters the battlefield, you also prevents lands that have other abilities than mana abilities from untapping during your untap step. So Mutavolts and Fairy Conclaves all fall into this category. So I think that may be a really powerful and underestimated card in this matchup.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also the fact that even though Joel gets rid of the Nether Spirits, they will come back. And I mean, of course, Faeries are strong creatures, but in terms of their body size, a 2/2 Nether Spirit that is recurring could be quite troublesome for Joel here.
Yeah, definitely.
Jens here, leading off with a Probe, which means that he will draw 3 cards and discard 2 cards. You can also cast the Probe with the kicker cost, which was unique to the invasion block, where you can pay a kicker cost to have the card do something little more. And in the case of Probe, it actually adds a mind rot to your opponent.
Yeah, so forcing your opponent to discard 2 cards may be slightly more than just a little more than the original effect of the card. Yeah. But I mean, you can see that even for 3 mana in this deck, it's super powerful as it activates these Nether Spirits and really improves the quality of Thorén's hand. So yeah, definitely sets the pace for the rest of the game, I would say.
Yeah, and here Joel is revealing the Bitter Blossom to have his Glen come into play untapped. And what do you say about Bitter Blossom in this matchup? I mean, Bitter Blossom is one of the most powerful magic cards. It was banned in Modern for a long time, and for your only 2 mana, producing 1 black fairy rogue creature with flying every turn. I mean, you do lose 1 life, but those token creatures adds up.
They do add up, and I like I mentioned earlier, I think that Bitter Blossom is going to be one of Larsson's main plans for this matchup.
We see Thorén here picking up his Nether Spirit, and I mean, it's a 2/2. Joel could activate one of his Mutable to block it, but the thing is that the Nether Spirit will only return again and again.
Yeah, I don't think he's super keen on blocking the Nether Spirit. I think that he'll actually take a few damage from the Nether Spirit, and then if the game progresses, he'll use his fairy tokens to
chump block them, I guess.
To chump it. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, Joel losing life here from his Bitter Blossom as well as the Nether Spirit. He does have those Mutavolts in his deck that, I mean, we said earlier that Wrath of God could reset the board, but having sweeping the board and leaving your opponent with 3 Mutavolts, well, that's not what you want to do, I guess. We see here that Joel gets to play a spell sort of sprite, which when it enters the battlefield can counter a spell with converted mana cost X that is equal to the number of fairies in play. And Factor Fiction, costing 4, was just about enough for Joel to counter with his spell sort of sprite. And he can also activate his Mutavolts to add further fairies to his board.
Yeah, Factor Fiction, well, I mean, if there ever was a card that defined a format, I would say that Factor Fiction would definitely be one of them. I mean, the reason for you not to play blue to have access to a card like Factor Fiction, I mean, really skewed the format at the time.
And we see here that actually Jens's deck was capable of handling a Bitter Blossom with Dismantling Blow, destroying target artifact or enchantment, and this is also a card that can be kicked. If you do kick it, you draw 2 cards. Casting it only here without the kicker, just 1 mana short of it. We see Jens here having a counterspell backup here. And Sign of Una, I think, is a fair target to counter here for Jens. And we see that that's the case.
Yeah.
However, there is the spell for the sprite number 2 for Joel. And that means that the counterspell is indeed countered. And the Sign will go through here, making his creatures into 2/2s. And I think that was a huge turn for Joel here.
Definitely a big turn. Thorén is going to be really in it. I mean, he must come up with something big here. And I mean, that Wrath of God would sure sit in handy at the moment.
So I guess Jens here, he has to dig for something, but he decides to just play his Dromar here. Of course, he can, if he gets through with the Dromar, you can return all the Faeries if you want to, or all the tokens if you want to.
Yeah, returning those Faeries, I mean, that's gotta be I don't know. Those spell starter sprites, maybe.
Did you want to return blue creatures? I don't know.
Might be more safe for you to just have them sit there right on the board and having them in his hands, actually.
Yeah, alright. I guess the Mutabolts means that Joel can swing for 9 plus 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, lethal. So indeed he had to play the Dromar here. Joel not attacking that turn. I guess he wants to save his creatures. Or just swinging for lethal next turn or so. Playing a main phase Teferi here. Basically means that counter spells are not as effective in sorcery speed.
Definitely not as effective when in sorcery speed.
Yeah, and another probe here doesn't do much for Jens. Guess he will cast it here with kicker, having Joel to discard 2 cards. If nothing, he gets the information of 2 cards in Joel's hand, which may be something to Jens here, even though the deck lists are public.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you gotta ask yourself if that card actually, I mean, casting that probe might actually be his demise, because now that Joel with the second Scion will probably, together with the Mutables, be lethal damage. If
and the thing is here that if Joel doesn't go for an all-in attack here, Jens is actually having a Wrath of God in hand, and he got the second white mana to cast it. So I would say that this is Joel's chance to just get through here, and if he doesn't, if he chooses to stall the game, then he might be in some trouble, because Jens has 3 cards in hand, and Joel only has 1. But it seems like Joel here is activating his Mutabolts, turning them into 3/3s because of the Sign of Una. And true, if Jens would have not kicked his probe there, he could have just went Plains Wrath of God. That would have changed things a little bit. That means that Joel could swing with 3 Mutabolts. That's only 6 damage, so that leaves him at a 3-turn clock. Joel here, flashing in another Sign of Una. That's more than lethal for Joel here. And Joel takes the first game.
Yeah, I think that the game actually kind of played out the way that you would anticipate. I mean, with the pure control deck versus the control / aggro deck, having the 2 cards do the same thing basically, offering Joel to yeah, basically do stuff more efficiently with the cards you have, with the same number of cards.
Yeah.
Countering that factor friction was pretty key, I would say, as far as card advantage and control goes.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, for Joel here, his sideboard cards are a little bit strange. 4 Bottled Gnomes, and 2 Damnations, 1 Negate, 2 Tormod's Crypt, 2 Pepper Smoke, 4 Thoughtseize. I would definitely think that Thoughtseizes, the Negate, and well, I guess that's it really. That's what Joel will be bringing in. That's 5 cards.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we should maybe clarify to our viewers is that although the main deck is supposed to be the same deck that, or a close iteration of a deck that you kind of used to play, the sideboard is actually fit for this event. So my guess is that when you will crafted a sideboard for the event, he kind of looked at, well, okay, so maybe the Ball Gnomes is going to be good against some aggressive decks, the Damnation versus creature decks, and the, yeah, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, and I guess it's fair that some of these standard decks, once in their era, was tuned to beat a certain kind of meta. That meta game has changed since in this tournament it's just out of control. Looking at Jens' deck here, I would guess that 1 or 2 Disenchant is not bad to take in, but I really think that 2 Gainsay, 2 Duress will make it in, and there is a lot of really nice cards here in Jens' sideboard that I would say is tuned to beat the Faeries matchup.
So what is your take on the Samite Archer? Samite Archer being the 1 power creature for 3 mana that you can tap to do 1 damage to any 1 creature. You think that is something he'll consider in the matchup?
Perhaps. I'm not sure if... I mean, what cards do Jens want to bring out here? Is there any cards that are specifically bad against the Faeries deck? I guess the Nether Spirits weren't doing much, but they are kind of key to winning the game for Jens. I would not be surprised if Jens sideboard out the Nether Spirits.
Yeah, like you said, they're kind of key to actually winning the game. So if you sideboard out the Nether Spirit, how do you actually win, right?
Well, you do have the 1 Dromar.
Yeah, leaving yourself with only the 1 Dromar. I mean, that's being, from my point of view, I guess, would be leaving yourself maybe a little bit too vulnerable. But Control Deck does indeed provide plenty of control, especially if you get to do your stuff with the factor fictions and so on. But
yeah, indeed. We see here.
Yeah, not sure what he'll bring out. Maybe cutting the dismantling blows for disenchants, or adding more disenchants.
That sounds reasonable. We see here Jens having 2 lands and a bunch of counter spells. Basically, it's a good hand for him to start out with. Memory Lapse, counter spells. I guess Memory Lapse is something that, well, it's not a premium counter spell, but it's all right here. You will, of course.
I think that. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, you will, of course, here revealing a Sign of Una to place Glenn, and suspending an Ancestral Vision here. Ancestral Vision being a really powerful card. Let's bring it out to see here. It's suspended with 4 time counters at the beginning of each upkeep. Joel will remove 1 counter, and once the last one is removed, he can cast it without paying its mana cost, which is, by the way, 0 or nothing. And he gets to draw 3 cards, and that's pretty good.
That is pretty good. But you mentioning that the Memory Lapse is not a primary counter. I mean, if you put the Ancestral Vision on top of the deck, you have to wait for the 4 turns again before you resolve it. So I guess that's something going.
I agree.
So
Definitely.
Maybe we can see
annoying play there. Okay, so Joel here, turn 2 Bitter Blossom, and no counterspell for Jens here. He played his Underground River first, and I think he had the Salt March. However, at turn 2, Sabo's Web here. What does this do here?
At the moment, not much. I mean, we if we consider the last game where he had the 3 mutables, that would be a different story altogether. But at the moment, I don't think that Sabo's Web affects any. They don't affect the lands you will have in play, but they do affect the Pendelhaven that he has in his hand.
And I guess Jens here, being Thought Seized, not the best place to be at, just stuck at 2 lands here. It's reasonable for Joel to take a Memory Lapse or a Counterspell here. But as soon as Jens hits the 3rd land, things might change. However, looking at Joel's hand, there is a Negate, a Rune Snag, and yeah, I think that Bitter Blossom is going to do a lot of work this game.
Yeah, I think that this is what we touched upon earlier, where the early Bitter Blossom, I mean, he can just more or less ride that all the way home. Because if you look at Thorén's hand at the moment, there is nothing that dealing with the Bitter Blossom, and he will be hard pressed to actually force the cards that do deal with the Bitter Blossom. He will be hard pressed to force them through, seeing that he is stuck on the 2 lands, and Joel has plenty of opportunities to counter any threats.
Jens, of course, hitting his 3rd land here, a Plains, which also opens up for Absorb here. Kind of a premium counterspell, getting a few life, which would be important in this matchup, but Joel is comfortably sitting back here with 2 counter backups, a Scion of Una, and the Bitter Blossom just shredding through Thorén's life total here.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's stuck on the few lands is really key, I think, and also explains why Larsson picked the probe over any of the other cards. I mean, if Thorén is to make a comeback here, I think what he really needs is to deal with the Bitter Blossom, and I mean, lots of he needs to deal with lots of stuff, but Joel won't let him, and since he's short on the lands, he can't counter the counters of Joel, so...
Yeah. Well, Joel running out a Sign of Una here. I guess that's going to be absorbed by Thorén going up to 21. And Joel...
Is this still the end step of Thorén?
It's the end step of Thorén here. So basically that it taps out Thorén, and I mean, it's fair by Joel to bait out that counterspell, so he got to resolve his Ancestral Vision. I think that's the way Joel thought this through, is that he wants to resolve the Ancestral Vision, so he don't mind throwing away a Sign of Una. That's pretty much a must counter at this point.
Yeah, again, I mean... yeah, what can you say? The Ancestral Vision or the Scion are both...
Ancestral Vision is not a fair card at this point. It's not a fair card at this point, not at all. And the Teferi here for Joel is, I wouldn't say locking up the game, but it's clearly in Joel's favor at this point.
Yeah, I mean that Pendelhaven is not the card that's making the difference in this game.
No. The Pendelhaven sitting there in Joel's hand. Yeah. Recoiling the Teferi here. Discarding the Pendelhaven, of course.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, Joel is at 14 life, but Joel is happy down at 1 life as soon as he's controlling the board this much. I mean, Thorén will eventually die by a swarm of Faeries here.
Yeah, I think that he knows what's coming for him. Those pesky little black tokens.
Indeed, indeed. It's a Wrath of God here for Jens. If he had just one more mana, that would make some difference to it. I'm not really sure here. Jens can't really do anything in Jewel's turn. So I guess there's not much to it here. He will take an additional 7 damage, falling down to 8.
Yeah, that puts him in lethal range for the next turn. And with the 2 rune snags and the negate on Larsson's side,
I'm not sure he's gonna let that through.
Even if he finds the 4th land for the Wrath of God, I think that this game is everything but winnable for Thorén at this moment.
Thorén gaining 5 life here from the Dromar's Charm. Do you think Joel is a good guy to let it through? Nope. Rune snag. And the Charm is no more.
Sure. And in a short while, neither will Thorén be.
Yeah, Thorén is facing down lethal here, and Joel would be wise just to attack and take home the first match of the Swedish Super Cup for his part. So you're looking at Joel Larsson advancing to the semi-finals.
Yeah,
Throwing in GGs.
Looking back at this game, I mean, you posed the question. Well, I mean, it must have been like a misclick from Thorén's part, the turn 1 river instead of the salt marsh, right?
Indeed. I mean, that did a huge difference. If he played the salt marsh first and then the underground river, he would have been able to counter the bitter blossom for sure. Not saying that Joel needed to run a bitter blossom into a counter spell, but it would have changed a lot of things here. And also in the first game we saw what could have been a misplay. I mean, if Jens would have played the probe unkicked, he did reach a Wrath of God and the plains. Playing the plains, he would be able to wrath the whole board out of Joel, leaving him with 3 mutables. However, that is a bad position to be in. It would not be leaving him dead the next turn.
No, also the turn 3 probe, I mean, even if it enabled his Nether Spirit, it did open up for some for Joel again for the Bitter Blossom, if I remember correctly. So
yeah,
it calls the question to ask maybe if you should play this deck even more draw go-ish than Thorén did.
True. And that said, we have our first part of the bracket here, and we see that Thomas Rosholm advances with Replenish from the 2000 Ursa and Mascus standard, beating Denniz Rachid on a mono black control. I would say a lopsided matchup, and Joel Larsson advancing, beating the Invitational Master Jens Thorén, the Solemn Simulacrum himself, 2-0, advancing to the semi-finals. And well, I wouldn't say it's a big surprises. We see Thomas and Joel advancing here, both 2-0. I would say candidates for a potential final in about 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, but I guess before we jump ahead to conclusions, I guess we should say something about the other quarterfinals. So coming up next is the Rode versus Watsfeld matchup. So Rode playing the Sly / Dead Guy Red / Mono Red Burn /
Basically a lot of creatures and burn spells for low mana costs. And by the way, coming up, meaning that in the next Sunday, November 10th, you will see these 2 quarterfinals between Olle Rode and Elias Watsfeld, Anton Jonsson and Matthias Jorstedt battling it out here on SVM TV.
So just to clarify something there, I do not know if our graphics are wrong or if the date is wrong, but the 10th would be a Monday.
All right. So probably 9th of November then.
So I would ask our viewers to pay close attention to our webpage. I do think that it's actually going to be on the Monday, but that is the 10th is actually the correct date, because someone was having trouble fitting it in on the Sunday. So
in about 7 or 8 days time, join us for the next quarterfinals between Oliver Elias Schwarzfeld and Anton Jonsson, Matthias Jorstedt. What do you say about these quarterfinals? Who will you have as a favorite to advance to the semifinals?
I mean, I don't think that the deck lists have been published yet, or have they? So I don't want to spoil anything to our viewers if the lists are not public yet. Can you confirm or deny if they are?
I think Björn might know that. Anyways,
but to sum it up, I think that the red deck, even though being kind of fast, will have a hard time against the time sieve deck, especially pre-sideboard. Post-sideboard, maybe we'll have a little bit better time, but I don't know. The time sieve, I think, is a clear favorite in the quarterfinals.
You think?
The left side of the bracket. What's your take on this?
I'm not sure. I think Ole, being a lucky man, I think he can pull out some pretty sweet starting hands here and just beat Elias over before Elias gets to play his full combo. I would say that it's a close matchup, and I would say the same with Anton and Matthias.
Yeah, Anton and Matthias, I definitely think is a close matchup. I mean, it's the classic matchup with the control versus the combo deck. And the story usually goes that if the combo deck can get going fast enough without being disrupted, then the combo decks win. Whereas if the control deck stabilizes and advances into the late game, then the combo decks kind of have a hard time getting the stuff it needs to happen.
Anyway, I think it's time to close out the first day of the Swedish Super Cup. Be very kind and follow us on Twitch, and follow us also on Twitter and Facebook, and you will catch up on all the latest news. And you can of course check these games out in replay mode. I think a little bit edited, of course, but you can always check out the games and the past broadcasts. And as well as future games you will see here on SVM TV. Next quarterfinals coming up the 10th of November, and at the same time, 2100 Central European time, that is. And until next week, I would like to say very much thank you to Anders for commentating here with me today and hosting this first premiere of the Swedish Super Cup.
Thanks for having me.
And I hope everyone enjoyed this as much as we did. And, well, until next week, have a very pleasant time figuring out what favorite standard deck yours is.
Alright, thanks everyone. Have a good one. See
Good night.